On a domain with a server, it's the server's job to identify users who should have access to network resources, and then to properly manage permissions for the users as they relate to those resources. Well, those accounts and permissions with a server and on a domain are done at the server level by someone with training to do so. For this course, we're going to work through a similar process, but we'll be working locally on this computer only using this operating system. Whether it's a domain, though, or a local computer, the concepts are the same. If we're using a home computer and want to add some control over who can use the computer, who can access the computer, and what resources they can access, we can do so by using something called user accounts. While this doesn't provide the same level of fine-grained control that you can have using a server, it does a similar thing on a smaller level. The computer we've used throughout this course currently doesn't have any access controls. When it boots up, it uses the only user account it has and simply logs on without requiring a password or limiting access. So we'll start by changing that. Now, everything that you do really that controls how the computer works can probably be found in the control panel. And with the later versions, Windows Vista and Windows 7, the control panel actually has similar options in many different places. So there could be different ways to do this. I'm actually going to start by just opening the control panel itself and then adding some new user accounts. To access the control panel, we'll go down to the bottom left of the screen, give that Start button a click, come up to the right side of the Start menu, and choose Control Panel. You see several groupings or categories, and on the upper right side, we see an entire section for User Accounts and Family Safety. There are two things here. One is add or remove user accounts, and the second is to set up something called parental controls. We'll actually do both of these. But first, we have to start by adding or removing user accounts. So we'll pause over that and we'll give it a click. What we can see from this screen is that there are currently 2 accounts that are already on the computer, and this actually is the default, or the way it has to be set up. When Windows is first installed, you need to create at least 1 account. If you don't change it or customize it, it's just called the administrator account. Then there's also always a guest account. Now, these 2 accounts should appear here, even though administrator may be called something different. For example, when I install Windows on my personal computer, I override the administrator name and I call it Aaron because it's my computer. Regardless, the important thing to see is that there are 2 accounts, and one of them below the actual name says administrator, and one says guest account, and currently the ability for a guest to sign onto this computer is turned off, even though the account exists. Well, that's all very good, but we're really not going to mess with these 2 that are already here. What we want to do is add another user. That can be done from the bottom of the screen. There's a link here that says Create a New Account. This brings up a screen that gives us the ability to add all of the things that we need to do, and actually it's quite simple. The first thing is, what do you want the account name to be? And this is a name that will actually appear on the welcome screen and on the start menu when that person is logged on. So I'm going to be very creative here, I know, but I'm just going to create one that would be maybe for a classroom that we're using. I'm going to create a student account. At my home, I would probably give 1 account for each person in my family. The next thing that you have to do, and this is actually an important setting, is you have to determine whether this should be a standard user or an administrator. Those are the only 2 levels that are available in this particular version. A standard user is an account that can have most software and system settings at their disposal. In other words, they can change things like screensavers, but they will be prompted or not allowed to change things that should require administrator privileges, things like the settings for the computer itself. When a person is not an administrator, if they try to do something that needs administrator privileges, they will be prompted for the administrator password. Currently on this computer, that's the administrator account. And currently, that account does not have a password. So obviously, one of the things that you would want to do, if you really want to secure your system, is make sure that whatever administrator account you have does have a password enabled. Otherwise, it's kind of a moot point because somebody could just press enter without a password and get in as an administrator. I think you get the idea. The administrators, on the other hand, have complete access to everything on the computer and can make any changes that they want. There's something in Windows 7 called user account control that actually can kind of dictate exactly what kinds of things or how much control a person can have. But that's a topic for the Windows 7 account. For now, we simply need to define somebody as a standard user or as an administrator. Since in a training environment we would not want a student to be working with system settings, we're going to leave them as a standard user. At this point, all I need to do is click on the Create Account button. That brings me back, and now you can see we have 3 accounts, and they have put the pretty sunflower as the picture. Well, these are some things that we may want to change, so I'm going to go ahead and click on this particular user. Because I am logged on as the administrator, and because I have administrator privileges, I can go in and change this account. A regular user would not be able to go in and change someone else's account. Some things that we can do here is we can change the account name, so if I misspelled somebody's name or they want to have something different, that's fine. In this case, I want to do the second option, which is create a password. It tells me I'm creating one for the student account, and to do something called creating a password reset floppy disk. That certainly is an activity that you can do. But since there's nothing important on this computer yet and nothing that the student needs to worry about losing, I'm not going to worry about that at this point. I'm simply going to type in a new password, and this is going to be fairly simple. I'm going to type Apple in all lowercase. Then I'm going to press my Tab key, which moves me to the next field, and I'll re-enter the password to make sure I typed it correctly. Notice that it does warn us that passwords are case sensitive. So if I typed it with a capital A here, I would have to type it with a capital A when I log on. Actually, Apple in all lowercase is not really a strong password. If this is just a home computer, I'm not going to worry too much about it. But in a business environment, there are certain rules. First of all, you should usually have 6 or more, possibly even 7 or more characters in your password. They should be a combination of upper and lowercase letters, also with numbers, and probably with 1 or 2 symbols in it. Now I know this gets everybody out of their comfort zone because you want to use the name of your pet or the name of your favorite sports team. But we're just saying that to have a strong password, one that is hard for people to crack, the more types of characters you can have, the better. That includes uppercase and lowercase letters, digits, and symbols. Spaces are usually not allowed. Now, if you work in a business environment, you may actually have certain password requirements that are different than that, and you'll have to ask your IT person what those are. Now, the reason that the more different characters you have makes it harder to crack is simply the rule of the lottery. There's a reason you can't win $200 million by only picking 1 or 2 digits. That's because the odds of you doing that are too great. So instead, you have to pick 5 or 6 numbers, and the numbers range usually from 1 to 35 or 36 or something like that. Mathematically speaking, the more digits you have, and the different types of letters and numbers in this case that you have, the more options there are. And it can take it from being just hundreds of options to thousands to even millions of possible options. Anyway, that's why we require the things that we require. It's not that we're just being difficult and trying to make you come up with passwords that are difficult to remember. Windows does have a little link here that says how to create a strong password. So if you want to review any of that, you can at any time. Now the next thing I'm going to do is press my Tab key once more. That moves me down to the link for creating a strong password. And if I press Tab one more time, it moves me down to typing a password hint. Now, just so you know, it says this hint will be visible to everyone who uses this computer. So you don't want to put your actual password. You also don't want to make it real obvious, like my favorite fruit. Well, geez, people can probably start going and Apple will probably be the first one they choose. So instead, just as an example, maybe I'd say my favorite food. Once again, I would not recommend that Apple be a password anyway, but we're just kind of working through some samples. Please make sure you make smart choices when it comes to the password and the hint itself. That's all there is to creating a password. It actually is fairly simple, but something you should think about. And if you want to prevent just anybody from logging onto the computer using your profile, then you want to make sure that your profile has a password attached. That's kind of the first level of security. We'll go ahead now and click the Create Password button. And that will be set. And if we take a look at the account, it now says the name is student, that I am a standard user, and that this is password protected. Well, moving back over to the right-hand side where we got to some of the options, including changing the password, we also can remove the password, or we can change the picture. Now, Windows just goes by default to a set of pictures it has, and it picks one. But maybe I'm not a sunflower kind of person. So I'm going to go ahead and choose Change the Picture. This is not critical as far as security, but you know what? People like to have pictures that are appropriate for them. Here you get to see the gallery of all kinds of pictures that they have, and you could choose something that you like. In addition, you also can browse for your own pictures. So let's see, I'm thinking that maybe, which one fits my personality today? There's kind of a cute dog we could use. Maybe I'll go ahead and choose that one. So you simply click on the picture. If the picture that you want is not here. And as an example, on my actual computer, I use a picture of myself for my logon. That kind of makes sense. In order to do that, you can simply go down and you can say Browse for more pictures. And then you'll navigate on your hard drive or a removable drive to find the picture that you want. In this case, I'm just going to use the Sample Pictures folder that comes with Windows. And instead of the cute little dog, maybe I've decided that I would like to have my penguins. I really like penguins. We'll give that a click. And now that's going to be my picture. There you go. It's that simple.